right, so let's continue the study of cryptography. In particular, we'll think about how to use various mechanisms we learned so far, such as digital signatures, public key encryption, and so forth, into building something called a public key infrastructure. All right, so you saw how you can sign using a secret key, and someone can verify with the corresponding public key. You saw how you can encrypt with the public key. But the question is, how do you know the public key? Okay, so let's say that you have Alice wanting to talk to Bob. And in order to encrypt the message for Bob, she needs Bob's public key. But how is Alice going to get Bob's public key? So the problem is a bit simpler than with a symmetric key, because with a symmetric key, it should really be secret, right? So you can't leave it lying around on a public bulletin board or something like this, because it's supposed to be secret. But still, there's still some tricky issue with, getting a public key. So let's assume that we're just doing something very basic, namely, when Alice wants to talk to Bob, she sends him a message, over the internet saying, hey, Bob, what is your public key? So give me your PK. For example, let's say you go to bankofamerica.com and you want to establish a secure channel with Bank of America. So for that, you need Bank of America's public key. So you would just send, a network message to Bank of America saying, can you please give me your public key? And Bob will respond with his public key, Bob. And then Alice can just encrypt whatever message she wants to send to Bob. She can encrypt it using Bob's public key. Okay, so that only Bob can decrypt the message. So, again, networks and, communicating from, with someone remotely, there could be an attacker right in the middle. So do you see do you see a problem with this approach? Can send a different public, exactly. So you could have your attacker being a man in the middle, okay? And we talked about man in the middle attackers for Diffie-Hellman key exchange. But basically what happens is that this attacker sees that Alice wants Bob's public key. So instead what the attacker is going to do, when Alice asks for the public key, the attacker is going to reply with his own public key of the attacker. And Alice doesn't know that that's not the public key of Bob. How can she know when she doesn't know the public key of Bob? And she might just encrypt the message with the public key. Well, let me call it ADV, adversary, the message. And then the problem is that the attacker can decrypt this message, okay, and see the message. If the attacker wants to even make his attack less detectable, the attacker could have actually forwarded Alice's request to Bob for the public key, but when Bob responds with Bob's public key, the attacker keeps it for himself, and then the attacker, after decrypting the message M and looking at it, could send the encryption with the public key of Bob of this message M. So Bob and Alice could communicate without ever knowing that something bad is going on, but the attacker is able to see the message. Okay? So you can't just send a message over the network to someone saying, give me your public key, because some attacker can respond with their public key. Okay, so it's not that easy, even though these keys are public, and it's okay if the attacker sees Bob's public key, it's not okay if the attacker can replace it. Is it clear why this is a problem? Okay, so this is another instance of a man-in-the-middle attack. All right, so the question is, how could we possibly protect against this? How can we retrieve Bob's public key in a way that we can trust? So spend 2 minutes to talk to your partner, so someone close to you, about mechanisms to address this problem.